All right, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and especially I want to thank my guest, Amie Seisay, CEO and founder of Seisay IT Solutions, technology enthusiast, and a friend. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So the first question is, just tell us a bit about your background. Where do you come from? What's your heritage? Tell me everything. I want to know it all.
Sure. So, surprisingly, I was born and raised in DC and have lived here all my life. And I say surprisingly because usually people are from other places in the DC area. So since it's such a transit city, I've been here my entire life. And my family actually came over here in the 70s from Sierra Leone, West Africa.
Wow. So DC, born and raised. I'm assuming then that means you're here for life, right? You're a DCer for life?
I guess so. It was after college where I played with the idea of me actually moving somewhere else. But I love this area. I love that there's always new restaurants popping up and different places to try. And there's wineries and festivals when, of course, pre-COVID occurred. There was lots of different things to do. So I really enjoy being in this area. There's so many activities and I enjoy the people. So if I move somewhere, it'll probably be a place like my backdrop, which is in Hawaii.
That would be fun. I think we all would move to Hawaii right now.
If I can find a direct flight, right?
Right.
I'm over in Cali first.
So then tell us a little bit about your company. What do you do?
Sure. So I would say 85% of the work that we do is around helping companies work more efficiently using Office 365 products, primarily SharePoint, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, Teams, of course, and of course, SharePoint on-premise. That's where I started back in the day as a SharePoint architect. And so 15% of the work that we do is public-facing websites using WordPress. Very simple sites if a company wants a web presence online.
Wow, that's pretty neat. I did not even know about the WordPress part. I know who to call now when I have a problem with WordPress.
Exactly.
So then what brought you into the IT field?
So I kind of always had an interest in something with science. And so it started with, of course, I could dig back to maybe science fair projects with my dad. So he always made them fun, always made them very interesting. I was always the kid that looked forward to science fair projects. Even with my son, I was always excited about it. And we built robots, right? And fun things that are of interest to us. And so I wanted to be a pediatrician when I was a kid because I thought I wanted to go into medicine. My dad has a medical background. And then college hit and that changed. And so I thought I wanted to be a pharmacologist, a person that actually makes medicine. So I majored in chemical engineering, and of course, in my junior year, I decided to change my mind, and I decided to go the computer science route instead. And that's where it all started with me getting into tech.
Huh, interesting. What a surprise. Somebody changes their major their junior year. Seems to be.
My dad was like, "What are you doing? You can't change your major." I was like, "It's fine."
But so what made you change your degree to go computer science? Was there something that popped up?
Yes. So with chemical engineering, there was there were definitely a lot of chemistry classes that I had to take. And I remember organic chemistry. It was okay. And, the professor always thought, that I did well, but I didn't really understand it, didn't really connect with it. There were long lab hours. And it was cool to make aspirin. And it was cool when things blew up. But one of the things that, I kind of didn't feel as if it was gonna keep my interest to go the chemical engineering route. So I remember thinking about previous classes that I took. So I took this computer, I think it was like an intro to computer programming class or intro to computer science class. And I remember working on some code and it was really, really difficult to figure out. And I remember that joy and that satisfaction that I got when I finally figured it out. And I remember just kind of thinking through, maybe this is the way that I want to go. And I actually ended up getting an internship at the Naval Research Lab. And that also kind of helped solidify that I wanted to go down that path, because they had me working on some Java, like object-oriented projects. And then they had me working on, it was on a Red Hat Linux server. It was PHP, MySQL. I was building a website, and it helped me to see that there's other things that I could do, because in the computer science course, it was just Java, and I didn't know that there was other avenues that I could go down. I mean, I knew I could go down like networking, and I didn't like routers and switches and things like that. But yeah, I think that computer science, it kind of helped me to see that there's so many different directions to go in. So it helps solidify the decision.
It's pretty awesome. And I'm really happy to hear that that works for you. And you've been doing it for a while. You've been around the block a little bit, and you're well known in the community, which is pretty awesome. That's how I met you. Other people mentioned your name, and then I run into you, and I'm like, hey, I've heard your name already. So since you've been around a little while, what's something that you would change about the way IT is today?
What is very interesting with IT is that it's moving at such a fast pace. And it is hard to keep up. Even if you're an expert in 5 different areas, there's 10 other areas that just came out last week. And so I think that the user groups are great with having the demonstrations, especially your user group, on just people understanding and navigating around the government space for Microsoft 365. I think that, just it's kind of hard to support end users because they find things before you do, right? And so just keeping up with the pace. And I think that maybe even having, I don't know, some place where it's consolidated of here's what's changing, here's what's happening, to help you navigate through that would be helpful. And I know there's different people you can follow on Twitter and different accounts that kind of give you little pieces of what's happening. But there's so much, especially in Office 365, there's so much happening all the time. So I think one of the things that is helpful is, communicating with people like you and just exploring different options. I had someone call me this week and said, Amie, I need help with SharePoint. And it was like a Java data table or data set. I can't remember. And I said, my first response was, are you really taking me back to JavaScript? And so, and then I actually ended up helping them. And it
Awesome.
saved a lot of time, right? So yeah, so I think that that's one piece. And then just making sure that people who want to get into the field, that they feel like they have the resources available to them so that it doesn't seem scary to get into the field, is another thing that I would love to change. Sometimes I work with people or talk to people and it just, they are intimidated by it and it seems so difficult. And I say, well, let me show you the way. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, and that's fantastic. I agree with you. The pace of change is incredible. I mean, you're in my network of, hey, have you seen this new thing today? Today, no announcement, no like pre-message telling us it's coming, right? So right. I agree. Yeah, you got to build your network and learn what's going on. So with the pace and with what's going on in your company and the business that you've been building, where do you see yourself, going into the future? What are some areas you think are important to focus on?
Sure. Information is, of course, moving at such a fast pace that I think having more artificial intelligence capabilities is going to be key. We're seeing a lot of bots. We're seeing a lot of ways to even further automate processes. We're looking into, of course, going into dynamics a bit more. And from the public facing website perspective, we're also looking into more about like search engine optimization, because that's always been an area that like there's so many different components to it and it takes so much time. And so that's another area we want to spend time on. And even actually putting together more content, like actually starting to develop the content and putting it out there. Because we have so much that we do, but I think that getting that information out would be helpful to even allow other businesses to be able to read information about how they could be helped and in ways that we've learned.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole search engine business, right, is AI without knowing what the algorithm is. And so search engine optimization is kind of trial and error in some ways.
Rankings and Google's changing their algorithms all the time.
That's true. So, I mean, and that's really interesting. So are there any, I don't know, I mean, this is the end of our questions, and I really want to thank you for coming today. But before we go, I want to give you a chance. Is there anything else on your mind in this space that you want to share or mention before we go?
Just, like you said, I think it's great to have that community and people that you can talk to. And just, I think what happens a lot in the user group space is that people are really friendly and they will share information, and just, I think even having those one-on-one connections, because you could talk through an issue that you're having and you can figure it out much faster than you can on your own. So I think those support systems are helpful. And I think it's also even more important now that we're all not in the same location together. So we don't see each other physically anymore to force those connections. And we have to be a little bit more proactive about it these days.
I found that very interesting. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming today and telling me more about your background. I'm learning something every time I talk to you, and I think that's fantastic. So I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care.